Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm sharing about how to know if your relationship is normal. My guest Jennifer's marriage felt hopelessly distant, even though they didn't fight much. They shared the same apartment, but there was no communication. The silence between them was deafening, but today she feels taken care of and enjoys receiving lots of thoughtful gifts from her husband. She says they're a team again, and she's going to share with us exactly how she did that. Then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which is about what to do if you're married to a narcissist. And it made me spit my tea out. All that is coming up. But first, let's talk about how to know if your relationship is normal. When there's a breakdown in your relationship, it can trigger shame. You don't want other people to know what he just called you, or how you've been sleeping separately, or that he punched a wall, or shook one of the kids, or isn't coming home at night. When you're scared like that, it's normal to want to protect yourself from judgment. That means you can't compare notes with others to see if that happens at their house too. You're left feeling alone. If you did talk about what's really going on at your house, the person you share it with may tell you that you shouldn't tolerate that behavior. They may urge you to leave or question your judgment if you don't. The shame keeps you isolated in the worst way. Most of us will go a long way to avoid that feeling of shame because it feels like life or death. That's why I didn't want anyone to know about the struggles in my marriage. I wanted to keep my status in the tribe, so I suffered silently, but it wasn't necessary. Here's how to know if your relationship is normal. First of all, no relationship is perfect, not even mine. As someone with a front row seat to the real goings-on in thousands of relationships, I can tell you there are all kinds of, quote, shameful things happening in marriages all over. I've seen thriving marriages that had endured affairs, or kids getting hit or shaken, and separate sleeping arrangements for years. In some marriages, he's very close to a female coworker, and the wife hates it. Even the perfect family you see in Facebook photos is dealing with the aftermath of one spouse giving the other a sexually transmitted disease, even though they've been married for years. Computers get thrown against the wall, a parent has a blow-up with a child, large sums of money are spent or lost without the consent of the other spouse. There are threats to leave or commit suicide. Couples get into physical scuffles. Bill collectors call regularly. He drinks in the morning or goes to jail. I've seen couples who screamed obscenities at each other at the top of their lungs. Oh, wait, that was my marriage in the bad old days. In other words, relationships are messy. I'm not saying any of that is right or fair or okay. I'm not saying you should just accept it or put up with these things indefinitely, but I am saying that if you're experiencing some of them, you're not alone. I'm saying that if you decide to keep your marriage anyway, you won't be the first, and it won't make you wrong or bad or weak. It won't doom your children or make him think he can get away with bad behavior in the future. In fact, I see the women I know who have decided to fix their families as some of the most courageous, committed, and humble I've ever known. As social creatures, we want to belong. Shame can interfere with that like crazy. Just having a secret makes us feel separate, but that feeling of separation is a lie. I was amazed to see the response of other women when I started sharing openly about the very things I was most ashamed of in my relationship. That I raged at him, that he didn't want to have sex with me, that we had the power turned off for non-payment. To my astonishment, rather than judging me, thousands of women came closer and felt a bond with me, which I love. I was also surprised to learn that the BDSM community passes my books around because they considered me an important thought leader and a frustrated bottom. I guess we have more in common than I realized. I was honored to be invited to inner circles of faiths, typically closed to outsiders, like Orthodox Jewish women and rabbis who pronounced my books 100% kosher and called the 6 intimacy skills Kabbalistic. I'm so honored that these observant women came to study and become coaches with me. And then this born and bred Methodist was invited to speak to Mormon women and Muslim women. I felt like a rock star when what was supposed to be a small gathering turned out to be standing room only, and women in hijabs lined up to ask for autographs of their dog-eared, highlighted copies of my book. Women emailed me saying that they had believed that only Egyptian men were the way I described in my books. Japanese wives sent me handwritten cards thanking me for saving their marriages. An author in Germany flew to where I live in Southern California to study with me because what I wrote about resonated so strongly with her. Women in same-sex marriages reached out saying that if they could just get support with practicing the intimacy skills, they knew it would bring peace to their homes and families. They cheered at the results. I share all that not to brag. Well, maybe a little. But to demonstrate that we all have more in common than I ever realized, and sharing what I was most embarrassed about helped to create that connection. I'm still floored at how very much women everywhere, while they may have different preferences than me, want to feel pursued, desired, safe, and special in their relationships. It's a small world, after all. My team of coaches and I serve vegans and carnivores who want more passion, Yankee fans and Red Sox fans who crave peace, and even women who enjoy yoga, which I am resisting, who long to feel desired. One thing we all have in common is a feeling that we are the only one who has a challenge we have in our relationship. We believe we're the only ones whose husband isn't making enough money, or is too harsh with the kids, or who's having physical altercations, or whose drinking gets way out of hand. We fear that our situation is hopeless and will never have the playful, passionate marriage we crave. That's just an illusion. Instead, it seems that on every continent, we all married the same man. That's why we all feel so connected on group coaching calls and in our private Facebook groups. So what if you're enduring one of the difficult situations I mentioned? What then? Just because someone else is in the same boat doesn't offer much comfort when it feels like the boat is sinking. But just telling someone else can help a lot. It did for me. Now I know why they say you're only as sick as your secrets. Telling the truth and admitting I needed help led me to learning and practicing the 6 intimacy skills that helped me get my boat back to smooth sailing. Women also have in common that we are the keepers of the relationship. We get to say if it's going to be relaxed and sweet or tense and distant. We have tremendous influence, even if we don't know it. The 6 intimacy skills provide access to that influence, and while only you know for sure if they are right for you in your relationship, thousands of women in 30 countries swear by them. I'm grateful for the sense of belonging I have with them. It's wonderful to know I'm not the only one. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest Jennifer's marriage felt hopelessly distant, even though they didn't fight much. They shared the same apartment, but there was no communication. The silence between them was deafening, but today she feels taken care of and enjoys receiving lots of thoughtful gifts from her husband. She says they're a team again, and she's going to share with us exactly how she did that. Jennifer, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us what it was like in the bad old days in your marriage. What was going wrong?
we had gotten married. We were so happy. We were like in love. And then all of a sudden, I can't like put a pinpoint what happened, what shifted, but we were just like two strangers living together, totally separate lives. Just like you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we'll raise our kids together and we'll both be happy that way. Just like cold and shut off.
Sounds pretty lonely. Sounds pretty
Yeah,
painful.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so what did you do to try to fix this?
Well, I read every single self help book out there, every marriage self help book. We went to therapy. Um, I I like didn't, I was so lost where to turn because like I kept feeling actually like society was just like, leave, you can do better, you deserve better, and things should be different. He should be this Prince Charming who should just make you happy. And I just didn't know. I didn't even before he pointed out that things were going south in our marriage. I knew there was something that was missing, but there was nowhere to turn until, of course, I found the Empowered Wife and that group and your group. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Oh, yeah. So he was pointing out that your marriage was not all that it should be, you're saying? Your husband was, or
Yeah, like he came to a point that I did not see coming, where it was like this isn't working anymore, and I was like, "Whoa, what do you mean? Like this is supposed to be forever?"
so was he saying this isn't working, like we should divorce, or just was he saying let's try to figure something out, or was he asking you to
Um,
change?
he was kind of like, "Let's part ways."
So he was ready to end the marriage.
Yeah,
So terrifying for you. Or were
yeah.
you also feeling like, because
No,
it
I
sounds like
was so caught off guard.
you were. So that
I
was
was
a very,
totally
very bad day.
blindsided. I thought like, what do you mean? Like, I've been sticking it out. I was doing, like, I was reading. I hadn't at that point read the self help books or the marriage books yet, because I didn't realize how big of an issue we were having. But I was like, I'm here by your side. And even through the silence, I'm staying. So, like, what do you mean that you're
Yeah. I'm taking care of your kids. I'm keeping your house, right? Like I'm doing all
right?
the things a loyal wife does. And here you're saying, it's not. So what were his complaints about the marriage?
Well, actually, he kept saying that I was complaining all the time, and I could not understand that. I was just like, I didn't understand what that meant because I'm such a positive person. And now I see it. Now, reading your book and getting coaching, I'm able to like see what a complaint is. I didn't.
Okay, so he says this, he drops this bomb into your marriage, and then you jump into action. You start reading all these books, and but you're hearing people around you are saying, just leave, Jennifer. You should get out.
Yeah, like the very few people who knew about it, they said leave, but actually like what I didn't do is I didn't publicize this problem that was going on in my life. It was very secret, and I acted like everything was just fine and everything was great. And that was one of the best. I didn't know it at the time, but like that was one of the best things I could have done for me and for our marriage and for what I wanted is like fake it till you make it.
Wow. Okay, so that's your positive nature kind of coming through.
Yeah.
I remember doing the same thing. It was, I know for me, it was a little exhausting, a little tedious to keep up those appearances. But looking back, it sounds like you felt it really served your best interest because people people around you didn't really suspect that there was a breakdown.
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about your the role modeling that you had to growing up, and about like how that kind of created your expectations of what a marriage should be. How did that play into this?
Well, I have my parents have been married for like over probably 40 years now, and I saw the commitment that they have for each other. No matter what happens, they're there physically, um, but not emotionally. And I didn't understand that emotional component and how you can really like you can have it all. Like that is what I didn't understand. Mm.
Yeah. All right, so you have this big scary breakdown, and you take all kinds of action, and you read books. So what happened next?
So then we were seeing a therapist, and after reading The Empowered Wife, I went into therapy, and the therapist said, "What do you want to talk about today?" And I said, "Nothing. Our marriage is amazing. It is great, and I love my husband." And both of them just sat there, male therapist, my husband, and they both were like, "Now what do we do?" There's no problem to talk about. And that was our last therapy session together. And from then on, I just was Laura Doyling it all the way. I was just like, that was the end of therapy.
I love it. So, I mean, and did that feel true at the time, or it just felt like the decision that you were going to
There was,
focus?
there was so much I wanted to say, so much I wanted to complain about, so much else I wanted to focus on. And the crazy part is that my husband sat there and just like was like, okay, everything's great. But like here, we were in therapy for a reason. But then he was just accepting this statement.
So, what did you see for yourself from that? I mean, that must have felt kind of powerful. You made everyone's head explode in the therapy session, right? By saying that, did it feel kind of powerful?
It was so powerful. It was I actually ended up then like we sat there and then something came up and I said to the therapist like we talked about like defensive startups and whatever, and I said I'm about to start defending myself. And I didn't want to get into that dance that I now learned is so recognizable. I saw it about to happen, and I'm like, can I excuse myself because I think he has things he wants to talk about, and I don't want to get in the way. And they both were like, okay, she could leave. And that was the end of therapy.
Love it. I love it. So you're like, I'm not going to focus on the problems. I don't want to be defensive. This isn't serving anybody, and I'm just going to step out of this dance altogether. I love that story. I think that's yeah, that's inspiring. So so then what else did you start doing differently than what you had been doing?
I duct taped. I learned how to say thank you. Took I didn't even realize like verbally I wasn't verbalizing. I was saying thank you. I'm a thankful person, but I wasn't saying it in a way that he could hear it. And I mean, there was so many things that I worked on, like every single skill, every step needed critiquing, expressing my desires so that he could please me, and getting permission that wanting something is okay. Um, because just, I didn't think that I was allowed to have these things. Like, I thought he would surprise, like, I know, like, he can't read my mind to, like, get me a gift that I want without me verbalizing what it is, but I still was, like, waiting for that day for him to ask me, "So what is it that you want?" And that's now I see that, like, that's not how it works. That's not how you
Okay.
get what you want.
So how do you get what you want?
Well, now I understand that like husbands just want to please us. Like men, they want to please us. They want to make us happy. And knowing that, I express a desire in a way that inspires, and I got a beautiful bracelet for Hanukkah, and that I would never, in my wildest dreams, would have had the guts to say before that I wanted it.
Wow. So you must have felt really special and loved getting that bracelet. That's a far cry from let's get divorced. Like here's the bracelet of your dreams.
It was a complete 180. There are so many 180s. It's unbelievable. I would have never, ever, ever thought that a relationship, a marriage that was broken could be repaired like this. Like in my wildest dreams, I would have never thought.
Wow. Yeah. So, and how did you find the faith to kind of take these steps? Because some of them are scary, right? Like even expressing that desire. I know you've gotten into self care. Some of those things are pretty vulnerable. Even what you did in therapy, right, was kind of a big risk, a big departure from what you had been doing. So, how did you find the courage to do all these things so differently?
Um, I think it was definitely having like this group of women to hold my hand, a place where I can see what other people were going through and voice what I'm going through, and just learning from other women's stories, and like to take that risk. And like another thing that I had to like get out of my own way. I was in my way of being happy. And I love like the tagline of your book, like I was the perfect wife until I got married. Like that was me. I was That was
Right.
so me.
Right. Well, so how did so then you started getting happier, then it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. It's like amazing. I'm like amazing. It's just amazing. Like I once even asked you a question on the group, and you were like, "Oh, look, you're getting self-care in and things are getting better." And I'm like, "We have serious issues. Why are you focusing on self-care? We have other issues to talk about." And you were so right. It's amazing. Like it's amazing.
Wow, I love this. This is a great. I think you speak for every woman, right? We're talking about self care and the temptation. It's kind of like what you did in that therapy session. In a way, you're like, there's all these problems, but we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on making ourselves ridiculously happy, and then that somehow has resolved a lot of your problems. It sounds like. Is that? Am I saying this right? Because I think there's a
Yeah.
temptation to like skip the self care. Like, wait, no, I don't want to talk about self care. I've got to fix look at these things my husband's doing wrong. We've got to fix that. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, that concept to me is like being responsible for my own happiness. And it's not my parents' responsibility to make me happy. It's not my friends. And then it's not my husband's either. Like I need to show up as a happy person, and I need to get there. And wow, I self care. Like who knew how important it is? Like
What kinds of things did you start doing for self care?
I started playing tennis, getting massages, meeting friends for coffee, just taking time, getting into a skincare routine, just anything that would focus on myself.
Love it. And how did he respond to that? How'd your husband respond?
Um, he was really he was very supportive. He just was like so happy to be. He was eager to be around me. He wanted to be around this new person who's just about having fun and happy and a soft pillow. I think of it as like always a soft pillow to like land on. So he knows like he's not going to turn to me, and I'm not going to have that like mean face on that I did not see before.
Right. You didn't know you were wearing mean face, right? It just kind of snuck up, it sounds like at
Well,
the
I
beginning.
describe it to other people like if you have somebody that your friend that you know in life who's like just not nice to you, and you don't even bother talking to them anymore because you know that they're just not friendly, and you're like, forget it, I'm not even going to bother. I'm going to go talk to everyone else who is nice to me. And like, and that's what husbands do. They come to the point where it's like, eh.
Yeah, I totally get it. So what's your relationship like now?
It is incredible. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's like I know I sound like so fluffy here and like everything's wonderful and marriage is never perfect and it's always hard work, but now I know that what it gets you. And there's like now it's 90% good. And of course there's like those moments, but now I know how to turn it back around. My marriage now, I just got a beautiful eternity band for my husband, which was so sweet and thoughtful. He's like, "That's what you wanted, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, thank you." And then actually just last night, he put his arms out before we went to bed, and he like put his arms around me, and he fell asleep with his arms around me, which normally either would have been like uncomfortable or like just that's so vulnerable of him to, and there's so much intimacy there and passion for that to even happen. It's amazing.
So an eternity band is kind of the opposite of let's get divorced, right? Let's go our separate ways. That's the So what was the occasion that he decided to give you that?
I mean, he said it was like birthday and anniversary, but really it was just because he wanted to give it to me.
He
It
just
was like
wanted
it's like 5 months early. And
it's 5 months ahead of the anniversary and the birthday.
yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty flimsy excuse to just because I just wanted to give it to you. So I love that. So it sounds like you feel pretty special now and loved.
Yeah, I do. I definitely do.
And what about that that sort of deafening silence that you guys were living under before? Is that still there?
Oh no, that is not there. It's not, no, it's not even close. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time and talk to Jennifer from before and tell her what you know now, what would you say?
Um like put in the hard work, work on yourself, focus on yourself. It's going to pay off. It's this is all in your control. It's all in your hands. It's going to go in the direction that you send it in.
Wow. And then what's your tip for somebody who is feeling like you did, where maybe the communication's gone missing and he wants out and she's feeling like it might be pretty hopeless for her? What would you say to her? What do you suggest?
Get yourself happy cuz like you always see women who like they get divorced and then they look beautiful all of a sudden and they're ready to date and they're refreshed because they don't have the kids full time or they're now taking care of themselves. But like do it before. Like if this doesn't you have the man of your dreams already in front of you. You really do. You just need to learn how to bring it out of him and you and the whole thing.
So just yeah, just having those skills, it sounds like you believe that any woman could get eternity bands and beautiful bracelets or and have her man just open his arms like this and want to fall asleep snuggling.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I like you made the right decision, and you had like for those women who have kids, like you got married. You said, I do. You had kid number one. I do. Kid number two. I do. Like you made a few times in your life, you made decisions that you want to be with this person, and you're smart. You've always made good choices in your life, and he is a good choice.
Wow. Well, beautiful. It's I hear that positivity shining through, Jennifer, and it is inspiring, and it sounds like it's really served you well in creating a secure family. Like it's giving you a lot of confidence about how are your kids. Is there any difference for your kids in this scenario?
Um, yeah, I see that they they're young. but I know that I can tell that they were picking up a little bit on the silence, or just if there was any words being passed, if it was biting in a biting tone, they were able to pick up on that. And they see like I'm modeling a happy marriage for my kids now. And the skills are just amazing. I can't wait to help my daughter one day get the guy that she wants, because it works in the dating world too. These skills, I also would love to tell anyone who's single, and if you're like after over the age of like 25 and you want to be married, you want to be in a relationship, don't wait to get help, because it will make a difference.
Yes, the skills will make you an irresistible magnet. That's what we find again and again.
Yeah.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story of how you transformed a really hurting marriage into a wonderful family. Congratulations.
Thank you.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. It's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that's making smoke come out of my ears this week is from a mental health professional. And it's about what to do if you're married to a narcissist. She says what you should do is, quote, call it out. While the initial sharing of diagnosis might not go so well, she says, the after effect tends to be much better. She goes on to say statements like, careful, your narcissism is showing, done with a non-sarcastic tone, can be quite effective. Whew-wee. This reminds me of a quote from Francis O. Walsh, who says, some people find fault like it was buried treasure. So, this hot steaming pile of advice is to tell your husband he's a narcissist. That will help your relationship go more smoothly somehow. Only no one can figure out how. I'm really struggling to see how saying you're a narcissist, how making that your spouse fulfilling prophecy by saying it to yourself and to him and focusing on it, how is that ever going to create a playful, passionate relationship? I can see how it would cause wall-to-wall hostility. That I get. Of course, any human being would be insulted and likely defensive if you lobbed an insult like that at them. He would likely respond very badly, which you could then use as further evidence that he's a narcissist. See why spouse-fulfilling prophecies, good or bad, are so effective? As with all spouse-fulfilling prophecies, you get to be right. Told ya. But you won't feel connected, desired, or taken care of. I've never found an upside to insulting my husband, which is why I don't recommend it. Oh, I mean, I did it plenty of times in my early marriage because my fantasy was that if I pointed out his flaws, he would change them. But that never happened. Of course it didn't. That's not how it works. Criticizing my husband results in tension, hostility, and defensiveness. But what's even worse about this advice is that it's to focus on the trait that you don't like about your husband, who, like all mortal men, has some traits that you enjoy and others that you would gladly sell or trade. So he might be a talented musician or have a great sense of humor, or maybe he's a smart businessman or very loyal or handsome or athletic or adventurous. He might be super smart or so patient with the kids or so romantic. You could spend your time focusing on those wonderful qualities of his and calling those out, After all, you married him because he had a lot of qualities you admire. Or you could focus on and verbally reaffirm to him and to yourself that he's a narcissist. Guess what you're going to experience more of? You might be thinking, but what if it's true that he's a narcissist? What then? You can't just deny reality and hope his selfishness and coldness disappear. How will he ever improve if he doesn't even know how selfish he is? I don't want to suffer forever married to someone who is so self-centered, you might be thinking. In my experience, people tend to rise to my expectations. And this is why I love intentionally picking a spouse-fulfilling prophecy that serves me well instead of an unwitting one, like you're a narcissist. You always have the option of counting your blessings or of saying that you've been cursed. What if instead of committing to something that's sure to make you miserable, you chose another approach? Maybe you decide to make a game out of finding the times he's being considerate or warm or thoughtful and make a note of them to yourself and to him. What if you pretended you were a lawyer going before a judge and jury to make the case that either your husband is A, a narcissist, or that he's B, a thoughtful, sweet, warm human being? Since what you focus on increases, why not decide to make the most persuasive case you possibly can for the sweet and thoughtful guy? Sure, you may have plenty of evidence to the contrary, but the experience I'm having at any given time is largely a matter of what I'm focusing on. And it doesn't serve me to focus on my husband's shortcomings. When I focus on what he's doing right by calling it out, that contributes to a virtuous cycle of gratitude and appreciation between us. If I call out what he's doing wrong, I get to be right, sure, but I also become a critical shrew. So then I guess this expert might advise him to call me out on that and tell me I'm a critical shrew. It might not go so well at first, but then later he can say, careful, your shrewishness is showing. When I look at it that way, it still sounds like a truly terrible idea. And for that reason, the advice that you should call your husband out for being a narcissist and remind him later that his narcissism is showing is the very worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll talk about how to recover from a fight. And in the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that sometimes I laugh so hard I cackle. People look for eggs.